Hi guys. Kicking off, hope everyone's having a great time. So without further ado, I want to review what the word quantum means for us. So since the start of SolanaFM's Explorer, we've always wanted to put more focus and emphasis on speed and power. But that's a huge problem that we couldn't solve immediately, and we're happy that we've achieved that recently. And we got to start things off with just the interface, right? You've seen the bare-bone interface of SolanaFM today. It might be a bit too purple, so here goes. So what's up for interface in the Explorer are these couple of things. We've taken a much bigger step forward to say, okay, if it's dark, it's dark. If it's light, it's light. So that's the first change we made. And we want to cover a couple of other features that the ecosystem requires an Explorer to have. So things like a validator page, better live block updates, and even a new way to view any patch. So let's start with home. So right out of the bat, you can see that the home is the same as before, but we've cleaned things up. There's no more coming soon. There's nothing that's a bit wonky and whatnot, but yeah, we want to put more emphasis on simplifying the homepage because it's one of the places where you probably would access the least. Then we have blocks, right? We've seen how blocks show in various block explorers. They don't tend to give you enough information, so we want to take things further in that step. And what you'll see here is that you'll not only be able to view the block's information without viewing the block, you can also see how much transactions are well packed inside a block. So we call it efficiency, but we've recently gotten feedback that that's not the best term for that, so we'll probably change that. But yeah, so expect to see a full list of all blocks right after this presentation. So next, we have validators. So a huge problem that SolanaFM has is that we don't have a validators page. You have validators.app, you have Solana Compass, you also have Shinobi, you also have Cogent Crypto having their own custom list of like a validator list, right? And what we want to do here is that we also want to support that as well because as an explorer, you have significantly more coverage and exposure in the entire space, whereas compared to validator providers, right? So this is the newly developed validators page. What you'll notice here against the other lists is that we have fully indexed all the delegators for a specific validator, and you also have tooling at the back from our APIs where you can view and retrieve rewards for a specific validator. So there you have it. So that's interface, right? You have a whole new Explorer with a whole new cleaner, minimalist look. And you have this couple of updates for the general interfaces inside SolanaFM. Next, transactions. Transactions is actually one of the most viewed pages in an Explorer. It's about 75% or probably a bit more or less from there. And we want to put more emphasis there because that's what you use what you use Explorers most for, right? So we have 3 focuses, maybe 4, and these focuses are: we have a whole new transaction flow. We have a whole new way of interpreting instructions for you, devs specifically because this is a dev stage. And logs, you will notice that it's a bit more better defined now. So I want to talk about this weird term. So the thing about SolanaFM is that the initial transaction flow diagram is actually a directed graph. But now we want to introduce bi-directed graphs. And the scientific, I don't know what term this is, but people call it symmetric directed graphs. So in yesteryear's terms in SolanaFM, this is what you'll generally see, right? It's quite a mess. Like you have graphs that are like connected here and there, and they kind of don't connect as well. Like how does that make sense, right? That's just a transaction. Why not just combine everything and find a way to bind everything together, right? Like accounts and accounts inside a transaction should probably have a relationship together because it's, after all, within the same transaction. So that's the old one. But the new one, you'll see that almost all of the edges that were like predefined independently are now merged together as one. So because of that, an extremely sophisticated transaction flow view will be flattened out into a much more cleaner, shorter transaction flow view. So that's transaction flow. Next up, this is that one thing that we didn't put inside the overview box, but it's the biggest feature we want to build next, and we call it transaction headers. So in a transaction, it doesn't really seem to present as much summarization for you, right? And yeah, this is exactly what we thought of. So if you just paste a transaction in the new Explorer in Quantum, you'll be able to see a header of you performing a Jupyter swap transaction, and you have an entire summary in just one upper part of the screen. So within less than 25% or 35% of your screen, your vertical space, you have almost all of the information you need. Slippage tolerance, in the future, it'll be the number of hops that you've done, and even the platform fees that the platform or the provider is receiving from Jupyter's protocol. Next, we have instructions. So instructions are basically one of the core foundations of a transaction in Solana, and it's one of the most important things devs look out for. And boy, we have a huge change here. So when you take a scroll downwards and you take a look at all of the instructions, you'll notice that we now parse events in instructions. Apart from that, we have a whole new way of interpreting all instructions in SolanaFM. All types of programs are parsed with IDLs, including native programs. Next up, we have actions in an instruction. So instructions are kind of dumb, right? Like, they don't really tell you much, but as an explorer, actually, we can do much more. Like, an instruction sometimes has like 10, 15 different types of inner instructions. Maybe we can find a way to bind them and bundle them together, right? Like the main instruction, we should summarize that for the dev. The dev wouldn't need to look at all of the instructions to understand what the instruction is talking about. So taking a scroll down again, you'll notice that if you compress all of the instructions, you have a sub-sentence saying what each of these instructions are telling you about. So that's actions. So you can see that the main instruction in the program is at the top, the instruction name, and you have a summary at the bottom. You don't have to read the accounts involved, you don't have to read the instruction data, you can just have it in a simple summary. And this is how the logs are. Not a big change, but we've taken a step forward to see how we can build a better experience for viewing logs, make it a bit closer and more similar towards how Visual Studio Code exposes lines of code and indents. So that's transactions. We have transaction header that simplifies transactions for you, a brand new transaction flow that flattens out as much edges as possible to make it even more compact. You have a whole new way of viewing instructions. You can view events, you can view anchor-based events basically, and then you can view instructions, and you also can view them in summaries via actions. So next, we have accounts. So accounts is also another big thing in an Explorer, right? And so we have a couple of things we've made. We've started from the ground up again. We've rewritten everything from scratch. We believe that categorizing accounts is the right way to go. And without doing that, we wouldn't be able to implement and scale quickly with the various types of programs devs like you guys build. So looking up here, you will notice that a couple of things are introduced. We have very distinctively categorized them in the respective categories here, and there'll be more soon, and that they'll be much more readable for each context. So, sorry, give the video a bit of time. Okay, so when you view an account, this is the general overview and look of what you're going to see and expect. There is one big feature though. There are many people here that would like to view a specific tab by default. There will be a settings option for you to set a default tab. And that way it will save you so much more time when you're working on your own workflows. But in general, for a wallet account, we've now taken the liberty to cover stake accounts, domains, transfers, NFTs, tokens, and of course, transactions. So that's basically how an overview wallet is. Next up, we have a new feature called Quick View. It works like magic. And how it works is that when you're viewing an account, you'll notice that if you just hover over the hashes, you'll be able to view a quick summary of what the transaction is trying to say, right? So that reduces the amount of time you need to evaluate what that transaction is telling you it's doing. So we've currently implemented a couple of support for a couple of protocols like Tensor, Jupyter, and much more, but it's only about 10, but we'll cover more over time. So this is how you'll be able to see a transaction without viewing the transaction. So that's generally accounts. And of course, I'm missing one more thing. At the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice that we now support CNFTs and SFTs. So SFTs stand for semi-fungible tokens. Next up, we have the very last thing. We have performance and coverage. Performance and coverage has been one of the worst things in the entire ecosystem for explorers in Solana, and that's what we set out to do first. That's our core focus, and that's what we want to cover first. So these are the highlights of the things you expect from the new Quantum Explorer. You have about up to 10 times faster in loading performance. You have a multiplexer that multiplexes across multiple RPC providers like Triton, Helios, and more. And of course, you have extensive coverage to a shit ton of amount of parsers that we have in our infrastructure, and IDLs as well. And of course, parsing is always done on the fly. You'll be able to view events. You'll be able to view as many types that are defined by the public IDLs available for us today. So, how does it look like? It's crazy fast, and next up is 10 times faster. So here's how it looks like. So if you look at this snippet, I'm just simply loading a transaction from the account's view. Take a look at how long it takes. Done. So what we did is that we've done a lot of like layering in the entire infrastructure and layering of our project, our entire product, to make things even more performant. So I want to talk about something that a lot of people have been talking about, even the panel discussion that I was in earlier about as well, which is transfers. There's a huge problem in the ecosystem. It's very hard for you to do tax. How do I file for taxes? How many transfers did I send? How many token transfers did I send? I don't know. Like creating an account, that costs rent as well, right? Like how do I track rent? So we now have a new way of interpreting transfers. And for our transfers for accounts, we now support date-time ranging. This is never seen before in the ecosystem, and we would like to be the first to take a step forward to allow you to view transfers in a time range format. So next up, we have one more micro feature within transfers. You can also filter by token mints. So you not only can filter a range time, you can also filter mints, the tokens that you want to see instead, rather than viewing the entire thing. So how it looks like is as follows. So it shows you a small snippet of all the transfers for this month. And if you want to choose the calendar, look at the loading speed again. So we'll go back in time a couple of months, select the date range, and let go, and it's done. So that's the real-time speed that you'll get for the new Explorer. And when you do a filter, it's the same thing. Everything is API-driven. It's that fast. So in general, that's what you have for performance and coverage for the new Explorer. You have twice or up to 10 times faster in performance for loading things in the Explorer. You can now search much more faster. There's also predictive search. I don't know how useful this is, but if let's say you forgot your domain name and you probably remember your vanity address, try searching your vanity address. We will catch that. And next up, you also have multiplexing right behind. You don't have to select an RPC provider anymore. Everything will be multiplexed for you so that you can gain better reliability for loading your transactions, accounts, and blocks. And last but not least, all of our parsers in our Explorer is IDL-based. So if you expose your IDL on-chain, you'll probably get support on SolanaFM immediately. All right, so that's about it. We are doing an exclusive launch today, and if you do scan the QR code and just put your email in, you expect to receive an email invite to Quantum. And later this year, we'll launch Quantum, and we can't wait for you guys to try it out because it is so much better than the previous few Explorers that we have in the ecosystem. Thank you.